welcome to our conference.
Thanks, Tony. So I can almost hear the tops coming off the stubbies now, so I'll try and be brief. I've got a few slides, 3 slides, PowerPoint unfortunately. The thing with PowerPoint slides, you just got to remember there's only so many of them you're going to have to listen to in your life. So can someone do the remote for me? So I've had the great opportunity to travel as a Nuffield scholar during 2017. This time last year I was away for 4.5 months. So I just want to, and thanks for inviting me to a dairy farmer to your deer conference. And what I want to leave you with today, can you stop it turning your house? This always happens. What I want to leave you with today is just a bit of a flavour about some of the big picture global observations that they're not just I've had, but it's a bit of a song sheet, I suppose, from the rest of the scholars. There were 6 in my year. About some of the stuff that's happening overseas, what the impacts are for New Zealand, and what we need to think about as farmers with a bit of an environmental slant. So, firstly, 9 billion people by 2050. Everyone hears that figure a lot. But look, we could feed 9 billion people tomorrow. There's a lot of latent production areas in the world, land that's sitting there doing nothing, waiting for the right economic fundamentals. There's huge productivity gains still to be had. We visited Brazil. It's tripled its production of grain per hectare in the last 30 years, and they reckon they can do it again. GM, for example, has got massive headroom around that. So, what about you guys back there? Can you sort this? Go one. What else is on that second slide? Urbanisation. Now, 1950, 70% of the people lived in the city, in the country. 30% lived in the cities. Now, 100 years later, so about 2050, that is going to be an inverse. So what that means is that New Zealand, and we know about this, New Zealand's one of the most urbanised countries in the world now. It's that disconnect with the consumer that we need to manage as farmers, and it's a real challenge. How are we going to do that? We need to think about that. Is it social media? It's probably not mainstream media, but we need to be better at explaining to consumers what we do on farm. Otherwise, they're going to restrict their ability to farm. Alternative. So talk a little bit about. Can you go to the other slide, dear? Can you stop it there, please? Cheers. Confinement livestock farming. Now, as Guy mentioned, that's under huge pressure globally. Most of the ruminants that are farmed for their meat or their milk are in big sheds with total mixed rations, and that is a massive industry, and particularly in the US, it's got a huge footprint, and there's a lot of negative perception starting to develop around it. So this is a real opportunity for New Zealand because we are free range, we are grass fed, and the Bill Gates of the world are investing in alternative proteins because the public perception around confinement livestock farming. So that's an opportunity for us. I'll skip through the next one. E-commerce, I'm just a bit tight for time, so I'll back. Go back one. Forward. Unbelievable, I can't believe this has happened for the 5th time in a row. So New Zealand feeds about 0.3% of the world's population. I mean, a lot of you know that as well, and it's a bit of a cliche. We need to find the top 0.5% of consumers by income or whatever it is and target them. Well, I mean, it's interesting to see, well, I read recently that some of the contribution of your on-farm incomes is coming from the pet food industry. So, I mean, I think that's great. That, to me, is diversity. In milk, we sell skim milk powder with vegetable oil added as whole milk powder to poor countries. It's diversity. It's a smart way of doing things. Someone is already feeding those top 0.3% of the world's consumers, and it's very competitive and they're hard to get. We need to think broader. One thing that probably surprised us, the scholars, a wee bit is we think we're pretty good at New Zealand producing food. We are. We've got good quality food, but we've got no brands. I mean, there's a lot of brands around this room. They've got no global impact, which sort of surprises us a wee bit. I mean, Zespri and Anchor, you might get a flicker of recognition from a pretty large section of consumers, but that's about it. So another thing we observed, and this is again a bit cliche, I've heard it all before, talking to marketers who are buying agri-food out of New Zealand and them telling us that sometimes they play one another off in the market was quite frankly embarrassing, and it's something we've got to sort out. Our investment beyond the farm gate. Now, as farmers, we're really good at developing our farms and buying the neighbours and expanding our businesses and underpinning our production systems, but we're very, very poor at sending money off farm down the road to underpin our product prices. And there's Sinlay, there's Silverfern Farms, there's a number of examples of that. And farmers exiting Fonterra, same thing, lack of commitment to invest. Big issue for New Zealand. We're losing competitiveness, and if I go to the next slide, just one, sort of segues into this a wee bit. My topic of research was how pastoral farming can remain competitive. So, and it had a dairy slant, but it's also applicable to other livestock. Confinement, livestock, key driver, corn. Corn has grown 90 million acres in the US alone. Annual compound growth in yield, 2.7% a year. Sorry, 2.3% a year. Pasture, about 1/10 of that. So you start thinking long term, extrapolating those relative productivity outcomes. They're getting more competitive, and we're getting less competitive. Plus, we've got that bottom line there, pipeline of taxes, compliance costs. So that's a big issue for us. Imported feed, I won't go into that. Our international environmental reputation, this is another thing that took all the scholars by the surprise. We had a conference in Brazil, 70 scholars there from around the world, 6 of us. We're there for a week. We got approached by almost every scholar from agricultural producing countries around the world asking the question, what has happened, what have you done to water quality in New Zealand? So we're really beating ourselves up on our water quality in our own media, but what happens here is in the New York Post, is in the Daily Mail, it's everywhere around the world, and it's not the place to have the conversation. Our reputation is far worse than what our actual performance is in those areas. Guys touched on wintering, and we wintered 2,000 cattle. I've seen plenty of mud. I've seen some untidy conditions. I went overseas, talked to a lot of consumers, talked to a lot of farmers in confinement systems, and they asked me, what are you doing? I says, well, we have cows outside grazing grass. Wow, that's amazing. What do you do in the winter? Well, we put them on crop and graze them outside. Really? You can do that? Yeah, no, it's fine. And I was driving back through Temuka, and I saw out to my left on really heavy soils, a mob of cows on fodder beat up to their guts. This was in August last year. And I stopped the car and got out, and I said to myself, we've got to stop doing this. Right by the main road, this is dumb. And I've given it a lot of thought since, and I haven't got the answer. But that could be a pretty low-hanging fruit in terms of our reputation and nutrient issues. If anyone's got any solutions. So just to finish there, I think our social licence to operate, it is under threat. It is going to be a big issue for us if we cannot claim it back, because we're getting politicising water quality, and we've already heard about greenhouse gases. Front page of the Farmer this week, suggesting $150 a tonne on nitrogen as a curb for intensive farming. I think on the back of an envelope, this is sort of 30% of our net profit in our business, some of these taxes coming to reality. So it's really important that we get on top of the issues, front foot them, and reduce the impact of farming, because New Zealand does have a great story to tell, grass-fed, free-range. So First Light Foods is sponsoring this session. I spent some time up there in San Francisco in a supermarket they were selling or promoting grass-fed Wagyu, and look, US consumers cannot get enough of grass-fed meat and milk, and it's not only a taste or a composition, a product thing, it's a perception around, it's a great farming story, but we have to sort out some of this untidy stuff. We can't hold the high ground on that without sorting out some of this other stuff. So look, that's all I've got to say at this stage. I'm not have time for questions, but thanks for your time anyway.